So anyway, having that available. So Amber's
Yep.
going ahead and giving us the high five sign that it's time to get
We're
started.
like, we're gonna move into the live version now. So let me get us live. And if you want to kick things off, Joe, we're good to
Sure,
go.
sure. Let me know when you're ready.
You can go ahead and start.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Hi, my name is Joe Cap. I am co-chair of National Entrepreneurship Week. National Entrepreneurship Week is a congressionally chartered annual event which supports and uplifts America's new businesses and entrepreneurs. Originally founded in 2006, National Entrepreneurship Week takes place every year during the third week of February. In 2016, Amber and I relaunched National Entrepreneurship Week, and now all across the United States, from Maui to Miami to Maine to Missoula and to Minnesota and everywhere in between, America's entrepreneurial ecosystem is vibrant and thriving. We are super excited today for our final entrepreneurship conversation with the Department of Homeland Security. But before we jump into that, I want to go ahead and throw it on over to Federal Co-Chair Amber Ravenscroft, who's going to go ahead and share a couple of logistics information. Amber?
Yes, absolutely. So Megan, if you want to get your slides teed up, just a couple of reminders. If you are listening to this live, please use the chat function for introductory communication. And if you have any questions for our wonderful speakers, please use the Q&A function. We will approach those at the end of the session. So again, use the chat function for kind of introductions, everyday conversation, and then the Q&A function for any questions that you might have. So Megan, we'll throw it over to you to start your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much, Amber. And of course, it is taking a bit of time to get my slides back up. But while I'm waiting on that, I just want to say hello. So my name is Megan Mail. I'm the Director of Industry Partnerships at the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate. So we are the research and development arm for the department. So we support operational components that you are familiar with, those on the front lines, like our Customs and Border Protection, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, Transportation Security Administration. So we work with all of those end users to meet their research and development needs. And if someone else on the call might be able to throw up the slides, I can now not get them back up. We practiced this, but for some reason, they are not coming up. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
There we go.
Thank you so much, Sam. Yes, so I have introduced myself, and the next slide, I think, just talks about S&T, like I mentioned. We do a lot with across the department in terms of workforce planning. We want to get people interested in Homeland Security mission needs. We want to work with the private sector. We know that there's no point in research in a vacuum within the department, so we reach out as far as we can broadly across our partners, interagency, small businesses, academia, to try to get the solutions that we need. Next slide. So my office, the Office of Industry Partnerships within Science and Technology, we really have three main parts. So first, we go out and we do a lot of events like this, where we want people to even become aware of DHS Science and Technology. There are plenty of people that don't even know that we exist. We are fairly small R&D funds compared to Department of Defense and organizations like that. But we have a very diverse mission set, very interesting mission set, and a lot of commercial applications that translate into the Homeland Security missions across the department. And so we do a lot of events. We do a lot of outreach. We talk a lot about how to do business with S&T. Then we have a number of innovation research funding programs. So we provide funding to industry. A lot of our programs specifically target small businesses and startups because of the work that we do and the dollar amounts that we focus on, but we have opportunities that are open to any size of business. A lot of international opportunities as well as domestic opportunities. And then finally, the third piece is we are very interested in seeing our funded research dollars, these technologies that we're working on. We want to make sure that they're actually used. We're not doing research just to sit on a shelf somewhere. So we manage the tech transfer and commercialization for Homeland Security as well, in terms of getting things over that valley of death and making sure that we're really thinking through commercialization up front. So next slide. So in terms of, and we can talk about this a little bit later as well, but we want you to reach out and talk with us more. This is hopefully an introductory conversation. If you're not aware of DHS Science and Technology, please follow up with us. We have a team, our industry liaison, Dee Parker, and her team within my office manage our S&T innovation inbox. So there's real people behind that email address, I promise, and they actually respond to emails very quickly. We want to hear about the technology you have. We want to hear about what you're doing and how it might fit what we need. If you have questions about what's on our website, as you're sort of digging in a little bit to understand the opportunities that we have, reach out, start a conversation. We set up conversations with our technical program managers all the time who are interested in hearing about new technologies. And then we have listservs. We promise not to spam you, but if you're interested in certain programs like our Small Business Innovation Research Program, for example, or our Silicon Valley Innovation Program, or just general news, we maintain listservs so you can become aware of procurements opportunities as they come up. Just so you're not having to do a lot of searching, it shows up right in your inbox. Next slide. A great resource, and I don't just say that because I helped develop it, is our partnership guide. We were having a lot of different collateral out on our website where if you piece together an information over here and then clicked over here, you could come up with a sort of a picture of what S&T looked like and what it might look like to work with us. But we really tried to streamline that information within our partnership guide. So it really provides a breakdown of the type of programs that we have, who we're targeting in each program. So, are you a small business? Are you an international entity? What programs are you eligible for? We also talk a lot about the mission needs that we have, sort of a breakdown of the funding areas and just areas of interest for us. So it's all in one document. QR code will take you there. If you're interested in talking to us, just take a look at that first. You might learn a little bit more, come in with, make the conversation a little more, worthwhile of your time so that we can really get you the answers that you're looking for after you've taken a look.
Hey, Megan, this is really great. This has been a theme, by the way, throughout our conversations the last couple of days, is just the power of partnerships and what those look like. And it really runs the gamut in all the different agencies. So it's exciting to see this where you guys actually have done something super unique, which is kind of put it all into one particular document. So that's great to see. What a great resource.
Yeah. I hate the idea that we are sort of begging people to find out about us. I think we want to make it as easy as possible and then allow them the opportunity to come and have a good conversation about it. We don't want to just throw 12,000 links at someone and hope they can sort of get the full picture.
Yeah, for sure. No, this is great.
Next slide. Probably talked through this already on the last slide, but again, just a plug for the partnership guide. It talks about the different collaboration opportunities, how you can connect with us based on your organization type, the mission-focused areas that we are looking at, and a breakdown of what those subtopics look like, all within that document. Next slide. So within my office, we have a number of different funding programs. You might need your magnifying glass on some of the words here, but again, this table is in that guide. But just to quickly sort of give you some highlights of the opportunities that we have, to start from the broadest possible, our long-range broad agency announcement. It's a 5-year open opportunity that has very high-level areas of interest that we are interested in hearing from researchers on how they would address that mission area. We are not being prescriptive on how that should be accomplished. We want to hear unique opportunities given a very high level topic. That opportunity can result in a number of different types of awards, other transaction agreements, contracts, grants, and that is open to a number of different types of entities, large businesses, small businesses. And that is really our standing opportunity. If we don't have any other procurement opportunity open, any of their targeted solicitation, the long range BAA will always be open to allow people to potentially work with us. At the very least, that is there. On the other end of the spectrum, our Silicon Valley Innovation Program is targeting the small business startup community, both domestically and internationally. So we work with our component end users to develop areas of interest. We have an open topic right now that I'll get into in a few slides, so I won't get ahead of myself there. We also, within my division, we run the Small Business Innovation Research SBIR program for DHS. And that, I'm sure most people are probably most familiar with that program, but we at DHS utilize the SBIR program quite a bit. We have seen a number of successes coming out of that program. We make great use of it. We just this year, and again, I think I go into it in a couple slides, but we have a new program to really target outreach and awareness of those communities. So I think I'll stop there and go on to the next slide. I think I have some more information about some of these programs. Prize competitions. This is a very, very broad way that we work with the innovation community. These are really, we use America Competes as our authority for prize, but we're really looking for, citizen innovators, we like to say. We've almost concluded the Clean Power for Hours prize challenge. We'll be making announcements on finalists within the next month, 2 months on that prize. It's the second in a series of climate prizes. We expect to do more of those in the future, potentially, later this year or next year in terms of announcing a new prize in climate change. But take a look at the ones that we've run so far. You might get a feel for, where we are going within the climate space and how DHS plays. We've seen a lot of interesting technologies come out of our prize competitions in this area. So it's certainly a series that we want to keep going. And we pay out cash. These do not involve a contract with a prize winner. So that's a very interesting way for individuals to participate. Very small businesses, again, not a heavy lift in terms of, having to have a company in place. Next slide. Oh, you are muted, Joe.
Just go back to the one for 1 second, the prizes, because we had the opportunity to chat a little bit with the Department of Energy actually immediately preceding this. And we had conversations about the prize competitions. And what was interesting about theirs is that in addition to winning prizes, they also, as you go through their sort of step and ladder for their various prize competitions, and then SBIR, and those sorts of things. They also have vouchers that can be used with the federal labs. The thing that was interesting about the prize competition is that in many respects, it allows businesses and small businesses and entrepreneurs to really come to the table with new and innovative ideas and ways for you guys as a agency to try and to test new and emerging technologies that maybe you hadn't been aware of for products and services that could be beneficial to the Department of Homeland Security. And so unlike as you move into the SBIR, which I know you're going to talk about next, this is really not very onerous. It's not huge in terms of application and those sorts of things. And that's intentionally so that these competitions were created in order to make it easy for just general citizens to go ahead and step up and say, hey, listen, I have an idea and I want to go ahead and offer an idea that I think could be helpful. And then obviously there's an evaluation component to it. But what these prize competitions do is make it much more accessible. I'm just curious, how have you seen the reaction in terms of these competitions and the participation with entrepreneurs and businesses? Is it something that's pretty well received?
It is. We haven't run as many as other agencies. I know we don't run them quite as often. But we're getting into the groove with this, this series of climate challenges where we're really sort of understanding what the sweet spot is in terms of using prize authority, getting people interested. I think, to your point, it's very interesting to see the types of responses that we get, because we tell people what we're looking for, but it's very broad. And like you said, a very pretty easy application. So you get some really interesting ideas. As part of this Clean Power for Hours prize, we're having people, the judges are going out to see demonstrations from the phase 1 winners, and just seeing them in their lab and understanding what they're doing. It's been a really great experience.
And the other thing that I'll add, and just putting in a plug for you guys, I think a lot of people have, when they think about the Department of Homeland Security, probably a lot of what they think about is, the TSA, right? Because that's probably the most interaction that people have. But when you look at this slide here, from clean power to cooling to digital wallets, you guys really run the gamut in a lot of different places and spaces in terms of what you're operating in. And so I think it's important for people who are watching and maybe haven't considered Department of Homeland Security as a place for economic development, innovation, and entrepreneurship. This is a really good example of just the array of things that you guys are able to provide and offer for people to compete and to think about on innovation. And the nice thing about the prize competition is that in many regards, that can serve as a stepping stool to other opportunities in other spaces. Having under your belt, winning a prize competition from the federal government and from the Department of Homeland Security certainly opens doors to be able to have conversations with other potential customers as well. So there's a lot of different benefits. And I didn't want to just gloss over that because I'm a little bit familiar with these prize competitions. And I think it's super important for people to understand that there really is a lot that's embedded in these.
Yeah. And I think generally to your point there, our DHS, it's fairly hard to come in if you don't have any knowledge about DHS and try to understand where you fit, because we are very broad and not separate enough to understand what the missions are all the time. And there's very forward facing missions like TSA, but there's a lot that people don't see every day. So child exploitation is a big mission that we have within the department. Climate is important. We have a space in that. So there's a lot of different missions, and we try to hit those different missions via our different funding opportunities, because we want people to come in with new ideas and have different ways of working with us.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's important.
Yeah.
I think it's really to help people understand is really one of the most accessible ways to go ahead, and a great front door to work with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Next slide. So our Small Business Innovation Research Program, we run one phase 1 solicitation annually. We do a pre-solicitation in the November timeframe and put out our solicitation typically in December every year. These cover our DHS missions. We source what ends up on our SBIR solicitation from our component partners. So you will find a mix of missions, a mix of topics. And again, I won't get into too much detail because I think most people are probably most familiar with SBIR, but, non-dilutive funding, there are specific data rights that are associated with SBIR that protects the small businesses that participate, US companies under 500 employees, and we work through the phase 1 feasibility section, phase 2, which is prototype development, typically longer, higher budget, and then phase 3, which is very flexible. You can work with other agencies, SBIR companies, to really get towards commercialization. But commercialization is defined very broadly under the SBIR program. So we've seen a lot of interesting work come out of phase 3s, both from DHS as well as partners at other agencies.
Yeah. Just on this one very quickly, we had Amber and I had a wonderful conversation with Amy Rushauer from the Securities and Exchange Commission. We were talking about funding, and just to make sure that everybody's clear, the non-dilutive funding, what that means is that this type of funding doesn't go ahead and if you own a company, it doesn't go ahead and give it any of that ownership, and that's actually a really, really good way for businesses to go ahead and increase their ability to go ahead, whether it's from a technological perspective, but oftentimes when businesses are searching for funding, they're oftentimes going to have to give away a piece or go out and get loans. And so that non-dilutive means that you're not giving up any ownership interests or any ownership rights in your business. And it's really important. I think, unfortunately, too many entrepreneurs at an early stage are so hungry for cash that they end up giving up some of those rights. And so this SBIR funding is really, really a wonderful opportunity to get funding that doesn't dilute any of that ownership. It's really important.
Yes. Next slide. I mentioned earlier, we have a new program that we've done a soft launch on this year. We'll be doing it going forward. We're calling it Phase 0. So it precedes, the typical Phase 1 of an SBIR program. But this is really doing a lot of outreach. It is targeting potential applicants, people who have never considered SBIR, who have never received SBIR funding before. We want to identify and encourage new applicants to the program. We want to target what the resources are for those applicants. We want to be able to provide more education on the program, and then increasing awareness of tools and services. So we ran a number of webinars during our open solicitation period this year to try to make sure that people got some assistance and thought into how to consider their response to our SBIR solicitation for Phase 1. So there's a wealth of information in our performers, our partners' webinars, and we'll continue to grow that. But we really are trying to, especially encourage people who, from underserved communities, underserved small business set-asides, to be able to understand how to work with us through the SBIR program. So that is the goal of our Phase 0 this year, targeted outreach. Next slide. So again, this is, I sort of went through this very quickly before, but this is a typical timeline for our solicitation. We do ours once per year. I know other agencies run it a little differently. They tend to have more money when they're able to do that, but we do ours once per year. Again, with our Phase 1 solicitation coming out in December, and we'll be making awards on our 24 solicitation in May. So next slide. And then these are resources on our SBIR program. We at S&T have a number of different deconstructing SBIR webinars that go through various topics of interest to companies participating or considering participating. We have information on our website, and then we have a series of success stories for those companies that have worked with us in the past, and how they're doing as a company, and also what their technology is doing for our end users. Next slide. I mentioned our long-range BAA. Sorry. We have 32 open topics right now across 6 mission areas. Again, this is very open. The solicitation sits for 5 years. We have a down select process. So we try to, we don't jump right to a full proposal on the long-range BAA. It's a very, it starts easy, right? It starts with information that gets matched to a program manager who does some reviews, a technical team. And then as you move through the process and there's interest, then you move to a white paper and a full proposal. But we do try to reduce the burden up front for responding to these so that it isn't as onerous right from the jump when you're considering responding.
This is great. You guys have a lot of ways that you're trying to really reduce the barriers to entry to help, bring, products and services to the table to help support the mission. It might be significantly more than many of the other agencies, at least based on what I've heard so far. And it's really great. It's making it accessible from the Phase 0 to the prizes to the long range to the long range broad agency announcements. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Next slide. And then again, this is our process. It's a 3-page abstract, like I said, a virtual pitch. So you can come and you can share information with the reviewers, and then a written proposal. So again, this is the down select, trying to be respectful of everyone's time and knowing that proposals take money and time away from other work. So again, trying to make the best use of everyone's time to get to the point of a potential contract with us. Next slide. This is probably more information that is best as a leave behind, but we can do a lot under the long range BAA. We have basic and applied research. We have prototypes, funding. We're not looking for commercial solutions. This isn't a procurement method. We really are looking for things that require research and development. But beyond that, we're looking to hear how you would tackle a challenge and how we can work together on R&D. Next slide. And again, similar to our SBIR, our website has a number of webinars. You certainly get some information based on the webinars that we've run in the past if you're considering. I'd certainly suggest taking a look at those before you jump right into the long range BAA. And next slide. So our contact information for SBIR and long range BAA, we have a couple of email addresses, couple of mailing lists that I mentioned before. If you're only interested in news about either one of those programs, consider signing up just for those. Next slide. And then our Silicon Valley Innovation Program. I mentioned this a few minutes ago as well. This is our program targeting the startup community. So we started this in 2015, 2016. It did start in Silicon Valley, which is how it got its name. But we do not just fund startups in Silicon Valley. So we can make awards to startups across the US as well as internationally, and we have. But this is looking to help target what's going on in the startup community, what's happening in the tech world in terms of solutions that are already being developed, and being able to apply them to government applications, co-invest in those. Again, this is non-dilutive funding, which is important, as Joe mentioned before. And we're accelerating the transition of the technology to the commercial market. During the process of our Silicon Valley Innovation Program, we are connecting the startups to end users. We have startups who are testing their technologies out in the field with Customs and Border Protection, for example. We're really getting them access. None of our work is classified that we run through this program. So we find that a lot of startups enjoy that. They're able to talk about these awards. Very often, this is the first time these companies have ever worked with the federal government, but then they go on after they've worked with us to get other government awards. So the way that we classify non-traditional performers, these are people who have not had a government contract over $1 million in the last 12 months, and they are under a certain number of employees. So we're looking for non-traditional companies. We use the department's other transaction authority, which means it's more of a commercial contract, something that allows us to get to award quicker from selection. And it's not a typical government contract. So it's more streamlined for the companies as well to work with us.
That's great.
Next slide. I mentioned we have an open topic. Timing is great. 1 week from today, we actually will be having an industry day, which I'll plug on the next slide. But we have a topic right now open on synthetic data generator. So we are looking to work with our cybersecurity and infrastructure security, CISA agency, as well as our DHS privacy office on meeting mission needs that they have to preserve privacy associated with getting synthetic data and the uses that we put them through within the government. So we're looking for privacy preserving technical capabilities to serve the mission needs. We utilize data across DHS for a variety of reasons, analytics, testing, developing and evaluating technical capabilities, and training machine learning algorithms. And so we want to know how we can address the need to synthetically generate data and then model and replicate the data for use, while protecting privacy, civil rights and civil liberties, and security as well. So next slide. So next Thursday, February 22nd, from 1 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be having a hybrid industry day. So please register if you'd like to participate via Zoom. If you happen to be in the Durham, North Carolina area, it will be an in-person event. You can register for that as well. We have the topic is open until April 10th. It says 2023 on this slide, but it is 2024. So you have not missed the deadline. But we are interested in, new people who maybe aren't aware of the Silicon Valley Innovation Program. Jump on, see what we're all about, listen to the topics. We'll be having our end users on a panel. We'll be talking about the program. Even if, synthetic data isn't your sweet spot, maybe you can learn a little bit about the program, knowing that we put out topics all the time. So we might have another one that makes more sense for your company. Next slide. The third piece I mentioned, technology transfer and commercialization. So we run a number of programs within the department to really focus on getting commercial solutions out. At the end of the day, DHS is not a huge buyer of technologies. If we need scanners, we need a certain number of scanners. We don't need billions of scanners. So we know that a lot of the technology that we develop, DHS isn't the ultimate end user, but we talk a lot about the Homeland Security enterprise because there is a big commercial use for a lot of the technologies that we use within the department. So we focus a lot on that, like how can what we are developing translate out into the commercial market. So we run cooperative research and development agreements for the department. So these are non-FAR-based ways, they're not real contracts. They are non-agreements. We don't provide funding via these agreements, but they allow partners to work with us on testing and evaluation and research and development. And it's an easy way to make sure that intellectual property is being protected on both sides. But again, not a full-blown contract. We run the Homeland Security Startup Studio. We just kicked off our third cohort of technologies where we're bringing entrepreneurs and inventors together with our federally funded research that's coming out of federal labs, our Department of Energy partners, Department of Defense partners, and really trying to spin out companies at the end of a 16-week program. So these folks who participate in the startup studio are spending nights and weekends working entrepreneurial skills and developing companies. So we've seen some really great companies. We're up to about 16 companies that have spun out of the Homeland Security Startup Studio. We're very excited about that. I'll just highlight our HS Works. We have an innovation hub for the department that we're just kicking off. It's run through our partner DefenseWorks, but we're always looking for people to stay involved in their ecosystem that they publish information for us as well.
That's great. It's interesting. And the one thing I'll say to you is that we had NASA on yesterday. And so NASA really does not, like you say, you guys don't necessarily need, a lot of scanners. I guarantee you that whatever it is that you need is going to be significantly more than NASA, because NASA usually needs like 7 to 10 of whatever it is.
Right.
So for them and the companies, the commercialization piece on how do you go ahead and put something into place. So the reason I say that is because I just don't want to sell us short with the Department of Homeland Security. If you need scanners, you're going to need at least a decent amount.
Sure.
And so in many regards, the ability to be able to go ahead and put in a larger commercialization plan as a result of co-creating with you guys has significant opportunities. There's not necessarily going to be the same, like, for example, you're going to go ahead and try to create something that's going to exist on Mars. The opportunities for that may not necessarily be nearly as abundant as, some of the other technologies that we're considering here. So just to keep that into context as people are listening to, but NASA has other opportunities as well. But it's just a little bit of a different comparison to some of the agencies that we've been listening to and hearing about some of the programs that they have.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think my next two slides, I already pretty much talked through the Homeland Security Startup Studio, but we run a cohort a year typically. So, we'll be looking for people who are interested in participating later this year. If you are interested in learning about it, we will have a public event, we call it Converge, at the end of our current 18-week cohort. That will be in the May timeframe. So we'll be able to see the companies pitch their technologies. We pick a winner in terms of, the technology, the way that they pitch, the growth that they've seen. But it is a really great way to, if you're looking to potentially move on to something new, we have people who are, veterans, we have people who are serial entrepreneurs, people are just jumping into the entrepreneurial mindset. So a great mix of people who are really spending some time working with us. And these are two examples of companies that have grown out of the startup studio. But we've assessed over 1,000 technologies. We've had 91 entrepreneurs participate, 15 companies formed out of the startup studio. So great reception so far, and a program we really see growing in the future. So keep an eye on that as we announce our next cohort.
Yeah, that's exciting. Really, really fascinating work that you guys are doing. And just, I think the whole ecosystem that you guys are pulling together and the way that, that sort of works hand in glove, but also the ability to sort of elevate from really inception to invention and that idea sort of and a stage approach. It's we see it in a couple of the agencies, particularly in the Department of Energy, where we saw in some of the conversations there. But I think what's nice, and I think also what you mentioned, is that some of the resources that are available within the agency are there to help kind of people bring them along and their companies along to go and grow, as it were, right? Can you just talk a little bit more about that? I know that there's some folks on your team and on the staff, and just like, what does that look like when somebody goes ahead and contacts you? There's probably a conversation, and then sort of a little bit of an evaluation of like, oh, this is actually something, that we could use. Just in general, like from a very sort of high level perspective, what does that look like, right? You get contacted by somebody who's an interesting conversation, or if they've done a pitch. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we try to make sure that our technical teams, our program offices are involved, to make sure that we're aware of, we're beholden a bit to requirements, right? So
Sure.
we're always interested in assessing new technologies and interested in how technologies might align to our use cases. Sometimes the funding goes the other way, right? It's a requirement that we have to address now because somebody on the border needs it right now. So marrying those two isn't always the easiest process, but that shouldn't be discouraging, because if we have the awareness of a technology, it's going to come back up. It never just goes away. These
Right.
technologies are always going to be needed. New ideas are always going to be needed. So we do a lot of assessing of technologies and then mapping them to, the requirements that we're seeing, the funded work that we know is coming up. And we want to make sure that those two match up at the end of the day.
And part of the innovation is also thinking through the new and emerging technologies, right? Like
Yes.
artificial intelligence and open chat GPT and some of these other pieces, which is why there's always opportunities. It's funny because there are a lot of people, sometimes I'll hear say, well, I don't know what kind of business I should start, or there's no real, new opportunities. And people who say that, or particularly students who say that, they're really just not looking, not even hard enough, because anytime there's new and emerging technologies, there's always opportunities to go ahead and create new businesses around it. I know, Amber, you have a couple of questions that you want to go ahead and make sure that we ask as well.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting because I know we've had a lot of good conversations about like intellectual property, and we talked to the US Patent and Trademark Office this morning. And I think, Megan, there's sometimes a perception or a worry maybe that um just like how will they protect their idea, or what does that look like? So when somebody works with S&T and they develop something and the Department of Homeland Security implements it, does DHS then own that property, or like what does that look like in terms of creating new technologies with DHS or federal funding in general, if you could speak to that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's not a one size fits all. There's certainly there's nothing that says, if you work with the government, if you receive government funding, you lose all your IP. I certainly think there's certain contracts that might want more of the intellectual property if there's a partnership that's being developed. But from our perspective, a lot of the programs that we run within DHS Science and Technology do not take a lot of intellectual property. So the Small Business Innovation Research Program, there are data rights associated with that program that protect the small business. Our Silicon Valley Innovation Program, we do not take any intellectual property from the startup community. So we know that, you know, protection of IP and the work that these companies have done on the commercial side before even considering working with the government, we know how important that is, and we don't want that to be a deterrent to working with us. So I think, you know, it definitely depends on the type of program. You know, sometimes there'll be government use rights where we might require a deliverable, but we do not own the intellectual property in the programs that we run.
Great. And you mentioned we had a similar conversation with NASA earlier yesterday about, you know, the Department of Homeland Security might not be purchasing millions of these products once they're developed, but you are preparing them for commercialization. So can you speak a little to kind of reiterate that concept? Like, how do you connect folks that have gone through your programs and created something with commercialization support?
Sure. So we have a lot of different methods to do it. I think it's certainly important for when a company is considering working with us and they're putting together a proposal, regardless of the type of solicitation or the opportunity that it is, I'd really strongly suggest you think through the commercialization up front, just as a thought exercise on your own, even if it's not explicitly required in a proposal. I think you're on better terms. You've set yourself up if you've thought it through, knowing what you're responding to, knowing what you are interested in doing. I think that's important, so that you can see the long picture, because it really is never just the development of the technology walking away. I think most people respond to these type of solicitations because there's some interest in the mission and the support and the technology, and there's passion there. So be thinking of how, you know, you're going to approach that, and then work with the federal program manager to refine that commercialization strategy once you're there. And there are programs that we have in terms of helping to find a marketplace around a solution. We do a lot of that. We do a lot of just making sure that there's testing and evaluation and red teaming, and making sure that the technology is really ready to go once it's out to be sold commercially.
You know, I want to just lean into this for a second, because we had a conversation earlier with the U.S. Patent Office, and one of the things that you're saying embedded all of this is one of the things that they said is that, you know, look, yeah, you have an opportunity to create an innovation, and yeah, you have the opportunity to go ahead, but really thinking about this from a commercial and the development of from a business perspective, and developing a business around it, right? Who is the market? Who's the potential market, right? The total addressable market. And thinking through that allows actually for the creation of a potential business that can create intergenerational wealth. And that's actually what came out of a conversation as part of the U.S. Patent Office, right? So as you look at a part of what this is, and for any entrepreneurs that are watching this, it's not just about, I'm going to take my idea, my invention, and I'm going to go ahead and create a widget or gidget or gadget, but it's how can I go ahead and create something? When we talk about commercialization, it's really also about how do I create a business that actually can go ahead and support me, my family, and potentially, you know, create a lot of jobs for the community and those sorts of things. So I think it's important to really put that into context, because you're touching and nibbling around the edges. What the U.S. Patent Office said, part of the reason that you want to go ahead and create some of these intellectual property rights around these things is in part so that you can go ahead and commercialize them. And then Jason said it with a snap, is that at the end of the day, what you're going to do is take it and then commercialize it and have the potential to create generational wealth for you and your family. So it's just an interesting concept, Amber, I think, as we weave through these various conversations, how there's an interconnectedness with them. That as a theme, even though you didn't say it, we'll use the patent office words, but also from a partnership perspective, right? And the importance of these partnerships and a partnership guide that you guys have, which it just helps people kind of along the way. Just all these really, really fantastic resources. I do want to be mindful of our time, Amber. I don't know if we have, you know, time for one last question, depending on timing.
I think we are supposed to be wrapping up. We tried to keep them around 45 minutes just so they're consistent across the board. But Megan, maybe any final we've kind of wrapped up the last ones with just any one piece of advice, or like if you had to give a first step to somebody in interacting, what would be your recommendation? I know there have been a lot of links shared, a lot of resources, kind of somebody this might be all new to. What would be your first recommendation?
Take a look at the partnership guide, to plug that again. I think it's a more productive conversation if you come in with some knowledge, some maybe this is where I think I fit. Even that is helpful because you've done a little assessing, learn a little bit about the department if you're interested in it. And then, we are happy to talk to you about the technology that you have or your interest in working with us.
And
Yeah.
Joe, I think that echoes everything we've been saying all week. Like, it's our duty as entrepreneurs and small business owners to do our homework, to make the most efficient use of the time and the resources that are possible. So there's a wealth of resources here. Review them in depth, get familiar with them. And then when you have a compelling ask or you have an idea that you want feedback on, the federal agencies are more than willing to get on with you. But it's your job to do that homework about what's the best fit first.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been a phenomenal series of days, and tomorrow we're going to be rounding it out with the Small Business Administration and a number of case studies with some of the divisions of them. But I want to go ahead and thank you, Megan, and the rest of the science and technology team over at the Department of Homeland Security. What just a joy it is to be able to hear all of the various programs, and that prize competition program, for all of those entrepreneurs that are listening today, but also on the recording. Go ahead and do a deep dive into the various programs that they have. Check out that partnership guide. There is an abundance of opportunities for you to build a business and create and secure generational wealth, to use the patent office's terms for that. And so, Megan, thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful information, and to you and to the rest of your team who've helped support and put together the presentation. We really, really appreciate that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And Amber, thank you for all your wise assistance and guidance, not just today, but every day and throughout the year, for all the hard work. With that, we will wrap up our final, what is that, happy hour sessions?
No,
Office
there's
hour
no
sessions.
screen.
Office
These are
hour
office
sessions.
hours.
It's our
Yes,
office hour sessions.
absolutely. Well,
So
thank you all very much.
thank you guys very much, and enjoy the weekend. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Amber.
Bye, I'll take care.